Okay, by now I'm sure you're already well acquainted with Def Noodles. Over the course of last year, Def Noodles, whose real name is Dennis Feitosa, has become a budding lolcow in the commentary community. Today we're going to embark on an excavation and leave no stone unturned in the deep dive that people have been seemingly requesting for months. Before we take the plunge, I'd like to reiterate a familiar deterrent. The harassment disclaimer that I place in my videos, in my descriptions, and in my channel bio are not algorithm fuel, and they don't exist to quote-unquote cover my ass. I genuinely mean it when I say that I don't encourage nor support the harassment of any of the subjects of my videos. In this video, I will be giving my opinions about someone that I am not shy about admitting I heavily dislike. If you're looking for a charitable, historical retelling, there are other channels who have created that. You won't find that here. If you're a member of the audience who's used to watching my more retrospective content where I hold your hand and walk you through it, you may wish to sit this one out. If you're unable to comprehend the difference between an opinion stated and the supplementary factual evidence used to support that statement, once again, you may wish to sit this one out. But without further ado, let's begin.
Alright, so Def Noodles is a YouTuber who, to be quite honest with you, is not really one of my favorites.
Quite easily the worst commentary channel on YouTube.
This guy has just had it coming.
And there's numerous examples you could grab of this guy just slandering other content creators on Twitter.
You're just asking for trouble. One of these days, I'm calling it right now, Def Noodles is gonna make a statement like this about someone who isn't gonna f around, and he's gonna end up in a fucking courtroom for a defamation case.
Absolute garbage fire. He's admitted to taking me out of context multiple times before, and this guy is trying to settle some little score with me?
There's a reason why I wear these, because I'm actually playing a cat.
The Def Noodles YouTube channel was created on October 13th, 2018, and hit its stride pretty quickly as he grew to 500,000 subscribers in approximately 2 years. This is a pretty big accomplishment, and that's probably the only compliment that I'll pay him in this video. My first exposure to Def Noodles was through a commentary YouTuber known as Kavos, who used to do a show called Make or Break. It was essentially a live stream game show where audience members would submit their channels through donation, and Kavos would review said channels by being brutally honest. A young aspiring creator named Def Noodles was entered into the show through either his own hand or one of his fans, and Kavos was not kind.
He's like trying to catch up. What, is he not even edited this? Is this just like some random video he's found?
In fact, Def Noodles responded to this stream in an extremely aggressive way on his channel shortly after.
I know it seems effortless, but it took me years of training. It really did. And if you think it's easy, then I challenge you to make a similar video so I can, I can see it and we can have more videos like mine, honestly. I wish more people did videos like mine so we would be having more fun with content instead of ripping each other apart. Like, we're all creators, you know what I mean? I wish that we were building each other up instead of tearing each other apart. But I appreciate a lot of the criticism that he's presenting here.
Look, I get tired of the YouTuber can't take criticism argument as much as the next guy. It's one of the oldest and most lukewarm common critiques that get levied these days, and I usually try to leave these out, because honestly, I think people get tired of hearing the same formula of commentary video. However, I actually have to make an exception here. This situation was so egregious, and Def Noodles is so pathetic, that I just have to let this one play out.
Hey guys, today's video is going to be a little bit different. I'm just going to have a conversation with you guys because, especially after yesterday's video, I got a lot of feedback. A lot of you guys thought I wasn't being my regular self. I wasn't being like super excited and just animated about how I was reacting I'm just gonna be completely honest with you guys. I've just been kind of sad over the past few days, ever since that whole thing with Kavos, where he basically tore my channel apart.
I have never in my time seen a YouTuber make a video contemplating quitting YouTube because they were critiqued in a game show. This really is a good starting point and really showcases the kind of person we're dealing with here. These days, and hundreds of thousands of subscribers later, this drama with Kavos still bothers Def Noodles. In fact, he's let his clear bias show as he's attacked Kavos for using the F-slur in 2016, and he took Deji's side in a cowardly defamation suit against Kavos. Just for note, if Kavos' homophobic slur from 2016 is fair game, so is Def Noodles contemplating quitting YouTube in 2019. Fair is fair, Def Noodles. In regards to the lawsuit with Deji, for those who don't know, in the UK, defamation cases are notoriously easier for the plaintiff to win as opposed to a similar type of lawsuit in the United States. Deji used the legal system to silence his detractors, and to this day, he has received little criticism for this. The irony of this entire situation is that Def Noodles couldn't comprehend the concept of Kavos' game show, but he commonly expresses discontent with the fact that the internet doesn't understand his poorly thought out satirical news gimmick. This is a subject we'll explore in great detail through the video, but in the meantime, I think the best place to start with Def Noodles is by dissecting the quality of his news-related content. On December 1st, Def Noodles reacted to a video made on him by a small creator named Grady Hooper that had 14 views at the time. Ironically enough, the first lines of this kid's script read as, "Def Noodles is the newest star drama channel, but he's extremely sensitive for a critic." And Def Noodles' reaction to hearing that was to tweet it out to his entire audience with a passive-aggressive caption, essentially proving the kid right. This led to a full meltdown where he calls Kavos a fascist, and in my opinion, tried to paint the entire commentary community as racist. This topic is pretty hilarious, and we'll explore it in great detail later. Moving on June 5th, Def Noodles posted a very positive tweet in support of Sky Jackson, who was using her platform at the time to dox people, including children. And I'm sure Def Noodles is aware of the severity of her actions, as he ended up reporting on them later. The initial tweet is still up, so who knows if that's his current stance. His Twitter account itself is a personification of the annoying side of cancel culture. And if you're not sure what exactly I'm talking about, this is what you could expect from your typical Def Noodles tweet. Who could have seen this coming? Some are noticing that Tana Mojo's new necklace has what appears to be an iron cross at the top of a marijuana leaf. According to the ADL, the iron cross is adopted by neo-Nazis and white supremacists. However, cannot be determined to be a hate symbol when without the swastika. You know, it's not even the fact that the iron cross is still awarded. I feel like the only reason this was reported is because she went to one too many COVID parties. Like, boom, once you hit the threshold, now you're a Nazi. Or how about Def Noodles' critique of Jason Nash for dating his 23-year-old quote-unquote super fan of a girlfriend who posted a video in 2019 simply stating that she was crushing on him.
But I just know that Jason was like,
Jesus Christ, does she ever stop talking? I should cut this because people are gonna click off the video. Like, oh my god, shut the f up!
And like, I have a huge crush on him.
Oh no, guys, how could she have consented? Def Noodles' coverage against David Dobrik has also been particularly interesting, as he previously advocated for sponsors to drop both David and James Charles. On the timeline, you can find Dennis directly advocating for sponsors to be removed from creators. This notably came before the Insider article was even released that escalated the drama. You can also find Dennis doing play-by-play, announcing which sponsors have dropped David in multiple different tweets. You can also find Def Noodles being unsatisfied that some creators are losing sponsors, but others aren't. And you can even find Def Noodles advocating for and linking his audience to platforms that have yet to demonetize David Dobrik, just to make sure that job gets done. This isn't even isolated to James and David either, because he also promoted various K-pop related tweets to his followers that were calling for Keemstar's sponsors. Def Noodles subtly got his word in by quoting verbatim their call to deplatform Keemstar and get his sponsors to pull out. He essentially checks off all the required boxes that make up the archetype of a scumbag online. But just to continue today's meme, we could talk about the video where he takes Aaron and Carly from the Vlog Squad wildly out of context to create a narrative that just isn't there in the source material.
Anyway, folks, as David's sandcastle crumbled, the Vlog Squad members Aaron and Carly ended up uploading a video addressing the situation.
We have been getting a lot of comments and messages this past week about our involvement with the Vlog Squad, and I just want to make it clear, like, we've seen stuff saying like David hasn't allowed us to talk about it, or we're legally not allowed to talk about it. And
what is happening, folks? Is David Dobrik really relinquishing the death grip that he has on his cult? Vlog Squad members should watch their back and maybe not drink David's Kool-Aid for a few days.
From that clip, I imagine your takeaway was that David is controlling all these people and making sure they're not allowed to speak. I mean, Def Noodles does mention cults. The implication is that he's being pretty manipulative behind the scenes, but this is actually about as charitably clipped as one of your generic live stream fails clips.
I just want to make it clear, like, we've seen stuff saying like David hasn't allowed us to talk about it, or we're legally not allowed to talk about it, and like,
or like no one is telling us right now that we can talk about it. It's just been a lot.
We've just been taking this time to really process this whole situation ourselves and decide how we were going to talk about it, because it is a very sensitive thing.
As you can see here, Def Noodles basically reshaped the entire nature of this conversation to create content, which seems to be a mainstay on his various platforms, as we will discuss in detail as the video progresses. It's important to note that more people are finally starting to understand just how insufferable this guy is.
Def Noodles covers the story today, and he takes that clip out of context. He made it seem like these girls were saying David told them to be silent. Bro, I'm telling you, like, this entire fucking drama commentary fucking community.
Keemstar, have you just discovered Def Noodles? This is what I was about to ask.
While David Dobrik is a pretty easy villain of the week to talk about, and most agree that he should be condemned, Def Noodles still manages to fuck this up. This guy just seems to struggle even when he's echoing the popular opinion of topics that are supposed to be slam dunks.
He allegedly had a part in planning the entire night, filmed it, uploaded it for millions of people to watch, and then made money off of it because he's way more likable. Look at those big brown eyes, folks. Plus, monetizing trauma is his business model.
Dennis, come on, man. This video has ads on it. Not only that, your last 8 videos have David Dobrik in the title. That's 8 in about a week, and if I keep scrolling, you have plenty more. Not only that, you censored the word abuser, so your video stays in the algorithm and monetized, my dude.
And I just hope that her abuser gets to face the entire full consequence of all of this.
I agree 100%, folks.
If someone wanted to swing a stupid allegation like monetizing trauma for views, I think your channel is the example. Maybe I would pivot your argument. When covering Pyrocynic, oh my god, that ratio. It's okay, Dennis, we've all been there, but let's see if he's actually earned it. When covering Pyrocynical, Dennis starts off the video by taking a shot at, well, every other YouTube commentary channel who's currently covering the story.
Well, that's unusual. I heard all that stuff on the internet, so you know what that means, folks. It's 100% true across the board with no nuance to it whatsoever. And I don't even need to hear Pyro's side to make up my mind, because I'm a YouTube commentator, and I'm just going to go along with what everybody else is saying and not stick my neck out because I'm too scared to think for myself. And yes, I am as smart as a block of wood.
I feel like this blow is actually kind of funny, but the issue I have with it is the video that comes after this segment is fucking terrible. Like it or not, if he put out a good video and slammed the community, I feel like this would have been a pretty dominating performance by Def Noodles. But he just doesn't, so he sounds like an idiot. Let me explain. Naturally, when a bunch of YouTubers try to talk about the law, it's a fucking disaster. That shouldn't come as a surprise because this is a community where most haven't attended college, some haven't finished high school, and the vast majority of us have never stepped foot in law school. Def Noodles brings up 2 sources to discuss sexting laws, the first of which is a post, "Is sexting illegal?" from a law firm's website called Coxwell & Associates.
Is sexting illegal? It is important to know that while sexting between consenting adults is not illegal, sending or receiving a sexually suggestive text or image to or from a person under the age of 18 is considered exploitation or child and can result in criminal charges.
This isn't too egregious, as he's just presenting what sexting entails in the segment. However, if one were to actually find the blog post and continue reading, this is a post about former politician Anthony Weiner, and this post is a great source if you'd like to read more about how a case like this would be handled in Mississippi. Keep that in the back of your mind for just a second. He also showcased some statements from lawyers.
So let's see what some lawyers had to say about a similar situation.
Is there any law against sexual talk with a minor online? Not asking her to have sex, just roleplay sex online. Yeah, this happened. I was talking to a 16-year-old. We did roleplay sexual fantasy. I also wrote nonfiction erotica for her about a sexual encounter with a minor. We didn't meet. We only traded a non-sexual profile pic.
Am I having deja vu, folks? Because that sounds exactly what Pyrocynical is going through, especially if those profile pictures are furry pics.
Okay, so this is where it really goes off the rails. In this segment, the lawyers he's talking about are the good people from Avo.com. For those who aren't aware, Avo is literally the legal alternative to like Yahoo or Google Answers.
Very frequently, those defendants went to prison for a very long time.
Wait, hold on, folks. That makes absolutely no sense. Why would an adult go to jail for sharing explicit text messages with a minor? They're just text. Now, I may not be a lawyer, but this next guy is, and he makes some pretty good points.
He couldn't even phone up a real lawyer for the sake of the segment or contact a YouTube one from the community. On top of that, the person asking is from Kansas. The first lawyer who's replying is also from Kansas, and the final one is from Boise, Idaho. So we have Kansas, Idaho, and Mississippi. For those who don't know, Pyro's from the UK, Ivory Rasmus is from Pennsylvania, and at the time, this wasn't even in the hands of the police yet. On top of that, the third example that Def Noodles is showcasing is literally just a guy talking about how this works down in Idaho. None of these state laws are relevant to the discussion of what's happening, or rather what isn't happening to Pyro, but do you know who knows this best? Oh, it's Def Noodles.
Seems like both in England and in Pennsylvania, where Pyro and his underage friend are respectively located, they're not really looking to prosecute people who are not exchanging images, but only having explicit conversations, even though the law seems really vague in that sense.
Wait, so Def Noodles conceded that the locations that are actually relevant likely wouldn't prosecute Pyro in this segment before what I just showed you. So this entire video is, hey, this probably won't happen, but here are some lawyers online that agree with me from fucking Avo.com to try to inject something into the conversation. I think my favorite part of this whole thing is when he ignores the disclaimer under each lawyer's post, where they both clearly indicate that these messages are not legal advice and that they don't prove the basis for making decisions about the course of legal action. Once again, I agree with Def Noodles that Pyro should have checked the age of the people he engaged with. But when I say that out loud, I don't need to gloss over the relevant information and highlight something that I know is irrelevant to the actual discussion and manipulate the situation. Def Noodles is the legal alternative of a guy who thinks he has cancer because he just Googled what a stomachache could mean and self-diagnosed. So I think through these examples, I've effectively laid the groundwork to establish that Def Noodles is at best pretty fucking stupid, and at worst, he's dangerously biased to the point of manipulating narratives. But Def Noodles isn't just a YouTube news channel. Dennis is also a proud satirist, and I'd love to spend a little time talking about my favorite joke he's ever told. Alright, calm down, Rick and Morty fans. This one's an extremely intricate joke. The setup is Def Noodles calling John Swan an alt-right YouTuber over and over again.
How's that a joke? What's the punchline?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Dennis. The punchline is Def Noodles saying that John is alt-right. And that's it. That's the whole joke.
And in other news, Dream exposed an alt-right YouTuber.
How's that a joke?
Dream exposing an alt-right YouTuber.
What's the punchline?
In this video, I spoke a lot about disclaimers that I put on my videos to discourage harassment, and Def Noodles has some of those disclaimers of his own, none of which have anything to do with harassment on a channel where he talks about people critically, by the way, but that's okay. It's perfectly fine. He doesn't have to have them. It's just ironic that I'm doing more to discourage harassment than he is. The disclaimers on the Def Noodles channel boil down to a get-out-of-jail-free card so he can fall back on satire if he ever finds himself in hot water. Essentially, Dennis isn't the douchebag. Def Noodles was. Except when Dennis goes mask off because of that criticism stuff we talked about him not being able to handle. In this tweet here, he highlights half of a definition to try to loosely pin John Swan as being an alt-righter because he made fun of neo-pronouns. First of all, that's not how definitions work, and second, I fully reject that neo-pronouns would be considered mainstream enough to even fit this in the first place.
I think people are really over it.
No. You shut the fuck up. At their core, neo-pronouns are the opposite of mainstream. They're literally pronouns that people make up on their own that aren't officially recognized. I've seen these used on Twitter and TikTok, but that's about it, and probably for good reason. If you identify as a cloud, there's a set of neo-pronouns for that. If you identify as a Kanye West fan, there's a set of neo-pronouns for that. If you identify as part of the Green Lantern Corps, there's a set of neo-pronouns for that. If you identify as James Marriott, there's a set of neo-pronouns for that. To act like someone joking about neo-pronouns like James, or Jameself is somehow a rejection of mainstream politics and use of online media to disseminate provocative content, often expressing opposition to racial, religious, or gender equality is pretty fucking stupid, and also far removed from what would actually make someone an alt-righter.
How's that a joke? What's the punchline?
Keep in mind, this tweet was done from his Go With Dennis account and not from his Def Noodles account, meaning you can't run and hide behind a persona here, Dennis. In response, a small YouTuber named Zog decided to give Def Noodles some of his own medicine and baselessly accuse him of sending a racial slur, which provoked Def Noodles to respond as one would expect. While I think fighting with fire on something like this is wrong, and I disavow it, I can't help but laugh that Def Noodles called a Jewish kid an alt-writer. You called a Jewish kid an alt-writer, you fucking moron.
Thankfully, I'm at a point in my life where I have self-confidence and I'm not gonna place my entire self-worth on someone else's opinion of me. If this was maybe like 10 years ago, maybe I would take your opinion so seriously and like even maybe quit YouTube. Maybe I was that weak-minded.
1 week later.
I'm just gonna be completely honest with you guys. I've just been kind of sad over the past few days, ever since that whole thing with Kavos, where he basically tore my channel apart.
Today we're going to be talking about the biggest crybaby on the internet. He's extremely sensitive to criticism. He's cringe, he's unfunny, he's toxic. I'm talking about Def Noodles. Def Duty likes to call himself a comedian, but everybody knows he's not really a comedian. He doesn't know what a joke sounds like. He's never been inside a comedy club.
I just took a DNA test. I'm 100% that bitch, even when I'm crying crazy.
Yeah, I got boy problems.
There's a reason why I wear these, because I'm actually playing a cat.
On January 10th, Def Noodles published a video to Twitter claiming that I was maliciously inciting my audience to slander him. This is something I am completely against and the type of thing that I have publicly opposed for a large portion of my time online. The evidence used to support this claim is the following clip.
Somebody make a Def Noodles app, tweet horrible shit on there, then post some replies to his tweet and see if his
You can't, dude. The website's down. You gotta get a gap, dude.
No, I have it open right now.
Okay.
All right. Somebody make a horrible account of Def Noodles.
Yeah, so I can screenshot and reply to him.
If one were to extend this clip another 2 to 3 seconds, they would hear me audibly say that I'm gonna pass on that one. I don't want to be involved.
And be like, this you. Say this you, and see how many people believe it, dude.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass on that one. I don't want to be involved.
This was clipped incredibly uncharitably, as you can probably now see. Therefore, I could not be inciting anything based on me literally saying that I disavowed or don't support the things he clipped uncharitably for his Twitter timeline. Some time passes and Def Noodles agrees to debate one of my friends from the call who chooses to bring this up directly to him.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass on that one. I don't want to be involved.
So see, I'm gonna pass on that one. So he disavowed. Disavowed.
Wait a minute. 29 seconds. Your clip is 20 seconds. Why the fuck did you leave that context out?
So he disavowed it 29 seconds in. Let's hear to see if he tells his audience.
No. You're not going to win this game. You're not going to win this game by simply saying he didn't disavow it immediately. He disavowed it 2 sentences after or whatever.
So that's close to 300 people that have been now informed to go do this. And I'm just going to tell you what I would do in this situation if I didn't agree with a situation. I wouldn't necessarily say I disavow it. I would say, hey, everyone in the chat, don't do this.
An important thing to note is that this interview was conducted when Def Noodles was out of character, so he isn't able to hide behind his satire argument for any of the following. When questioned why Def Noodles removed the part about how I didn't want to be involved with any attempts to spread misinformation about him, he pivoted his argument from Nick was maliciously inciting an audience to slander him to Nick didn't tell his audience to stand down.
I get you, and that's fine. That's great that he disavowed it, but he never told his chat to not do it. And I understand that.
What if he told his chat not to do it or whatever, and they still did it anyway? Would you have clipped that tweet differently?
I would have, yeah, if he had told his chat.
Really?
These are two completely different things, but nevertheless. However, once again, if you were to extend the clip just a few more seconds, one would be able to easily prove that Def Noodles has lied yet again. This clip also contains me literally telling my audience to stop and not do that.
Next time Def Noodles streams, Spanish out BLM. See how fast he...
Yeah, spam his channel BLM.
No. None of that. There's nothing wrong with BLM. Whoa!
But that's not all. If we were to fast forward my stream about a minute ahead, I would also go on to predict that Def Noodles would clip me out of context to smear me, based on how he's created context in the past to embrace the veil of victimhood.
Dude, I'm 100% not down for this. Like, I'm telling you that I don't want to be involved, and I guarantee my name's gonna be on the tweet. I guarantee me sitting here telling you I do not want to be involved and I don't think this is fair.
Dude, that literally happened. Dude,
What are you talking about, Nick? Look at that real tweet I
No,
sent you.
no,
You're
stop it.
so right, Nick. You're so right.
It doesn't even matter what I say. He's gonna f***ing name me anyway. And then post this f***ing clip.
In the debate, Def Noodles would go on to talk about how my channel could suffer the consequences.
But if you're on Twitch, his account would get shut down. You know, he would.
You might get a strike on YouTube too. So
yeah, so there you go. He would be the one who would suffer the consequence. He would suffer the consequence because it's still his stream.
While on Twitter, he was liking tweets of people who were false flagging me and trying to get me deplatformed. Motives here regarding why he would want to lie about me seem to all check out now. After he realized his arguments levied in the debate were thoroughly debunked, Def Noodles issued an apology, and he finally appeared to take an L.
I just want to add a correction right here. I'm saying that Nicholas DeOrio didn't tell his chat to not attack me. However, I was later shown footage where he actually did say that. Unfortunately, I didn't have that piece of the footage. I just want to make that absolutely clear. Nicholas DeOrio told his chat to not do that. Please disregard anything that I may say that relates to the opposite. I had no knowledge that he had told his audience that, so that's why I said those things. If I had different knowledge, I wouldn't have said it.
Which lasted all of about 5 seconds until I realized he literally lied in his apology. He then claims the reason he took me out of context was because he conveniently didn't have the footage, despite the fact that he claimed multiple times that he did have the entire 4 minutes of context.
I'm not gonna bullshit with you. That is slanderous.
I have the full 3-minute clip here and we can watch it. I mean, I was going to bring it back to the Twitter thread, but we can go back to that. So here's the thing with that. And we have to watch the full, I think it's 3 or 4 minutes. And then it kept happening. And you're right. DeOrio did disavow you. But
immediately. He wanted nothing to do with this. And the reason why he wanted nothing to do with this is because he knew exactly what you would do. He knew that you would tie him into this. He knew that you would clip him dishonestly.
I have the full...
Why do you have to pull... I mean, I literally described to you what the clip is.
We should watch it for full context so that we can see exactly what happened.
But it seems like if you have the clip downloaded, you have it installed, then you saw that part.
He also apologized on Twitter in a reply to my tweet, but he never unblocked me, so I couldn't even read it. That's because the apology wasn't for me. It was for my audience to see, and it was damage control. I don't think it's a stretch to say that this person maliciously clipped me to paint me in a negative light. I don't think it's a stretch to say that he isn't sorry for doing it. The fact of the matter is, he got caught lying, walked it back, got caught lying again, then apologized where he got caught lying again. I presented all of this to him with timestamps in his comment section that he was actively replying to, by the way, at the time, and I got no response. All I know is the same person who claims he was sorry for his botched smear campaign is now openly calling me an alt-righter and bragging how it's just satire on Twitter and nothing's gonna happen. I'm convinced this guy wants me banned from all forms of social media and will use his large platform to accomplish that goal by any means necessary.
So tell me why that's true. What factual evidence, what tweet outside of what happened December 2nd, what tweet do you have of Def Noodles or me saying that I'm a victim of harassment? This is funny because you like to say a lot that other people cry harassment, right? You know, I think it was unfortunate placement of it being after this that people drew those conclusions. So I'm not trying to play a victim. I'm not a victim by any stretch of the imagination.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Let's talk about the race card. In this segment, you'll be hearing steelman argumentation and honest representation for both Def Noodles defenders and Def Noodles detractors, who will henceforth be known as Def Noodles questioners, or DQ for short. Anytime I'm in this blue color, I'm a passionate defender against the DQ. And anytime I'm in this yellow color, I'm a proud DQer myself. With that being said, let's begin. On December 1st, 2020, Def Noodles published a series of tweets targeting myself and various other YouTubers that we've collaborated with in the past antagonistically. The first and third tweets are straw man arguments claiming that we see ourselves as the moral center of YouTube, or present ourselves as holier than thou, which couldn't be farther from the truth. On a good day, these tweets in isolation would likely not qualify as a critique even worth taking the time to respond to. The second tweet pertains to the greater scope, and I'll get to that in a few moments. moments. The 4th and 5th tweets in this thread contain Def Noodles effectively pulling the race card to silence criticism. Def Noodles claims that we use shady tactics to disenfranchise minority creators or make jokes that hinge on misogyny and flirt with fascist ideas by masking them as edgy jokes. Def Noodles goes on to state that he's from Brazil and moved to America with nothing by himself at the age of 12. He ends the tweet off by saying that he doesn't run away and won't be apologizing for standing up for himself. Now let's break that down. This rant was in response to criticism he was receiving by tweeting out Grady Hooper's video with just 14 views to his entire audience. The tweet that he made about bait and him using it to say people invalidated his freedom to respond is complete bullshit. He absolutely looks sensitive here, and the criticism isn't new. He's established from the start of his channel that people talking negatively about him is something that he's been unable to handle. Def Noodles was so ass mad that people called him out on that he actually went on quite the tirade, implying that my friends and I disenfranchise minority creators. We're racist for calling him sensitive for overreacting to an exposed video by some random kid. He then presented the image of himself as some immigrant who's overcome tremendous obstacles in his life to get where he is today, and he won't let racists like Nick DeOrio, Augie, Boblax, Tipster, wait a minute, Edwin, oh shit. Some of the group Def Noodles was calling racists are literally Mexican themselves. Regardless though, the obvious racism won't stop Def Noodles as he plans to stand up for himself against it. If you couldn't already tell, this attack is completely unfounded and ridiculous. Def Noodles got upset that he was getting clowned on and decided to try and paint all of his detractors as some of the worst labels possible to invalidate this criticism. This is probably the biggest bitch move I've ever seen anyone pull in my 3 years on the website, and it's the beginning stages of a larger pattern of behavior that we see from Dennis in regards to how he tried to pile on John Swan with his slimy timed alt-right allegation. To make this even more embarrassing, if you take a look at Dennis's IMDb page, it claims he was born in New Jersey to a wealthy Warner Brothers executive, and then he moved to Brazil at a young age before attending boarding school in Florida, all before his claim of moving to America with nothing at age 12. Then videos started popping up of Dennis making skits about how he sees himself as Brazilian and white.
Wow, man, I thought you were just a regular white dude.
I am Brazilian and I'm white.
Another video surfaced of Dennis claiming that his mother was Italian. For someone so hell-bent on claiming that we're all trying to disenfranchise minorities, let me ask you a simple question. How different is Dennis actually when compared to me or any of the Mexican Americans that he tied into this allegation? And the rebuke to all of this is as follows. The context you're framing these tweets in is dishonest. The parallel that you're drawing between tweets 4 and 5 are uncharitable at best, and these should be considered at face value. I recommend you watch the entirety of the debate between Dennis and Augie RFC to see the full context of his response.
First off, I think it's important to clarify that nowhere in this tweet does it say you're racist. It says disenfranchise minority creators. It says makes jokes.
Wait,
that
if you're disenfranchising minority creators, wouldn't that be a racist act?
I mean, people, the whole thing behind white privilege is that people don't understand that they're doing something that's disenfranchising someone without them even realizing it.
Just because these kids are disenfranchising minorities doesn't mean that Dennis actually claimed they were doing this intentionally. And before you start critiquing the rhetoric of the Def Noodles Twitter account, it's imperative to remember that Def Noodles is a satirist. He's a character. He was created by Dennis, and he's not actually Dennis.
This is also hyperbolic. I have to remind you, this is hyperbolic because this is coming from a character kind of place. There's truth in it, and I'll show you where the truth is, but there's hyperbole to it. So they flirt with fascist ideas. So the whole thing here that a lot of people took was like, it's calling them fascists, right? So here's the thing, flirting, okay? When you flirt with someone, does that mean that you're immediately dating them? I don't think you're a fascist. I think that you play around with fascist ideas.
If Dennis actually thought Augie was a fascist, why wouldn't he just say it to his face? Why deny it? Especially when there are so many clear examples, like these ones.
Do you think Ayler was like a big memer, dude, or do you think he was just a stern asshole? Do you think he had like deep down he was like, well?
Augie RFC referred to him as a big memer.
Do you think he was like, kill those filthy kids?
Okay. So you get the point. You say that Hitler's a fascist.
Yes!
Of course. So, I mean, I think that's where that conclusion was drawn.
Even if this wasn't the best example, there are still hundreds of examples you can pull off, even in this debate, of Augie making questionable, edgy jokes.
So here's another one.
Would you rather be in an orgy or storm the Capitol?
Obviously storming the Capitol.
So would you say that storming the Capitol was like a thing? Would you say that storming the Capitol was a fascist thing? It was like a coup, right? So it's fascist. Today or yesterday, tweeted the Confederate flag. So, I mean, that's the flag. That's where that conclusion comes from. You know?
That's not the Confederate flag. That's the flag of Chadville.
Like it or not, Augie is a misogynist. Hyperbole or not, he's openly targeting women with his platform.
So, Nick, this fat slut has an OnlyFans to run. She doesn't have time to back up her bullshit. Leave her alone, man. But Nick disavowed it immediately. I saw some of your other friends disavowed it. But that's an example, right, of like you're slut shaming her, you know, like.
Yeah, for context, this is a chick who had just called me a racist.
I know, and we can open that up here. I have it open.
I mean, this is an objectively nasty thing to say about somebody, but I mean, so was calling somebody a racist. So
I rest my case. As for the second tweet, this was totally misconstrued as well. The evidence cited about Dennis being Brazilian is based off an IMDb page. This is the equivalent of a YouTube birther movement, the way that people are scrutinizing where Def Noodles is coming from. Dennis and his family actually come from Brazil. He has no roots in the United States, and his supposed rich father won a trip to the United States in a contest. He finished his degree there in just 1 year, and luckily, that was the year Dennis is born. Def Noodles is from New Jersey, yes, but he was only there for 2 months. This context completely invalidates your downright xenophobic argument to invalidate Dennis's identity. This was never a victim card. Claiming that these creators are disenfranchising minority creators and Dennis telling his story are 2 separate tweets, and to scrutinize them as one coherent statement would be going against the intent that Dennis had when typing his hyperbolic tweet on his Def Noodles account. The DQers are as disingenuous, might I argue more so, than the person they claim to hate. Even if these criticisms levied to Augie were completely accurate, which they are not, your critiques levied at Augie are just that. They target Augie. These don't simply apply to me or anyone else for that matter. I'd address the edgy jokes equal flirting with fascism argument, but that's actually the next guy's job. This was a really weird backpedal tied to a guilt by association argument, and there's also one more thing you failed to consider. Dog, the point is nobody fucking cares that you're Brazilian, dude. I don't even think that any of us even knew at the time that you were. You yourself realized in a conversation with Augie that most of us likely hadn't even have watched a single recent video on your channel to this point. Nobody saw Def Noodles and thought, damn, this Brazilian immigrant is infringing on our YouTube real estate. Get over yourself. I know. What it says in plain English in that tweet, that's apparently not what you actually meant. Feel free to hide behind your stupid catboy persona, but I simply don't believe you. I think you're bent on revenge for the smallest shit, and I think you're incredibly unhinged. I think you got mad at us for clowning you, so you tried to say that we're a bunch of racists. I think you got mad about how I kept clowning you, so you tried to smear me. I think you were mad that Kavos was clowning on you, so you promoted tweets claiming he's a homophobe. And I think you were mad at John Swan, so when his reputation was eviscerated, you piled on with some bullshit alt-right narrative. Why else do you block every single person who speaks out against you? I have no problem with blocking people. I've blocked many. However, what I do have a problem with is you going out of your way to block people correcting you for the misinformation you're spreading about me. That shows me that you're disingenuous and you're fully aware of what you're doing, despite claiming to be a satirical character every step of the way.
All of a sudden, you started being real sloppy. You started getting stories wrong. Like, it didn't fucking make sense, and it almost came across like it was agenda. And tonight, we saw it. Everybody saw it, motherfucker. Dennis. Everybody saw it, Dennis the Menace. Dude, there's some weird type of bias going on.
Let me say this outright for you just so you understand. Dennis, I don't hate you for any intrinsic qualities that you can't change. I hate you because I think you're a bitch. With that being said, I think it's high time that a certain bird made his entrance into the video. I'm sure most people expected him to come at some point, so without further ado, I give you...
Yes, another bird in the picture. Let's see how long this one lasts. When it comes to clean editing, clean visuals, and even a clean avatar, might as well be the yin to the yang. Only except I'm not nearly as problematic. That's probably due to the scale of my audience. Give it up for them. But hello, I'm Doktor Skipper, and I'll skip some of the theatrics and get right into it. That wasn't funny.
So, Def Noodles, who we love again.
Comedy is a form of entertainment that's appreciated by almost anyone, from professional comedians who do stand-up to funny Taco Bell sound effects. Comedy is an art form on the basis of delivery, material, and timing, but comedy being perceived as funny is completely subjective. Like this. Bruh. Had no comedic timing, structure, or punch. It was just a bruh sound effect, and some of you might have found that funny. And some of you might want to leave this video and bash your brains on the concrete floor. But given this is a video about Dennis and I just explained what comedy is, you could definitely see where I'm going. Vulture made a published article titled Def Noodles is Testing the Limits of YouTube Satire. The article dives into how Def Noodles makes news, quote unquote news, and how he perceives comedy. He also gives his stance on the criticism of his satirical character. I'm gonna assume you've definitely heard points about Def Noodles and how he misuses the word satire from multiple other videos, if not this one. And not to even intentionally plug, but I made a video discussing this in more depth if you want to watch it. After this video, of course, I don't want to hijack the boat with my 3 cotton balls and duct tape of a viewer base. But I want to go more in depth about comedy, more specifically Def Noodles' takes on comedy and how some of the viewers just simply don't get it.
Stay safe.
Or how he decides what the structure of comedy should be. I don't want my portion of this video to be a snooze fest, but I have to read out the statement in order for you to have more context. I feel like there's an idea on the internet of what comedy is, but I don't feel like a lot of people really know what comedy is like. A lot of people who have the strongest opinions about comedy haven't been in a comedy club maybe ever in their lives. There are a few commentators who like to say that comedy is dead and this and that, and you look at what they think is comedy. And to them, saying racial slurs and using the Confederate flag, I'm like, how's that a punchline? You try to have a conversation with one of them and it's like, well, you're not edgy. I don't see what's edgy about it. Like, Louis C.K. is edgy, but at the end of the day, there's a format to what he's doing. He's got a point of view. That's his voice. He's not just going on stage doing a bunch of racial slurs. So when there isn't an understanding of what comedy is and there isn't an investment in learning it, then it just becomes a wasteful conversation almost. That's why I stopped really trying to explain it to people. Aha, you finally made the conclusion. The reason I had mentioned comedy being subjective earlier is that so it could be relevant to the points I'm going to make now. If you match the dots like a teenager's forehead, you could come to the conclusion that Dennis is someone who's inspired by late night talk show hosts.
Are you familiar with a soup?
No.
Are you familiar with a Colbert Report?
No.
While Colbert's political commentary might make you LOL and spit out your coffee, it's ridiculous to set a moral compass around humor in relations to that style. Yes, Trevor Noah is technically a comedian, but when you put Trevor Noah and Stephen Colbert next to Eddie Murphy, Bill Burr, and Dave Chappelle, you could see a huge contrast in their comedic styles. Edge, edginess, whatever the hell you want to call it, goes into a tunnel called dark humor. And with dark humor comes dark comedy. Being an 18-year-old who grew up on the internet, I've definitely dabbled in aspects of dark humor. And in the modern landscape of comedy, dark humor has been a huge taboo. But like I said earlier, humor is subjective, but comedy isn't. If you go up on stage and start yelling the N-word with no context, I might find it funny because of the shock value, but after 4 seconds of being 5, I'll snap back into reality and realize that actually wasn't really funny at all. But nonetheless, it's still comedy. It's just executed terribly. If you're fat and end up last in a race, you're still a runner. If you make videos on an iPhone and upload it to your YouTube channel, you're still a YouTuber. And if you make bad jokes, racist jokes, edgy jokes, or unfunny jokes, you're still a comedian. Comedy often takes trauma or dark subjects and takes off the weight. Pete Davidson is a comedian whose father passed away on 9/11, and he uses that trauma in multiple comedy acts. Same applies with racism. Racist jokes are not funny. I get a lot of comments about how calling out comedians for their racist jokes will end comedy. It won't. When someone says that calling out comedians for racist jokes will end comedy, that means that the person thinks the only funny thing is racism. Jokes have a very simple structure: setup and punchline. Setup creates expectation, punchline subverts it. That means anything could be funny if you use the structure correctly. Comedians who use racism as punchline to appeal to shock to make up for inability to craft a funny joke. Jesus Christ, Dennis, what's that grammar? Calling out comedians for making racist jokes is basically comedy self-auditing. An essential part of comedy is calling out unusual behavior. And unless we want to normalize racism, we have to continue calling out racism when comedians use it in bits. Comedians who get called out for racist jokes could always go back and improve their jokes. Any comedian who says, "I don't apologize for jokes," is implying their jokes are perfect. Do those comedians really think their words are so holy they cannot be touched? I've always thought the argument that calling out comedians for doing racist or offensive jokes will end comedy was a logical fallacy. Hope this helps anyone trying to help that friend understand that criticism can't kill comedy, because comedy is basically indirect criticism. Alright, there's a lot wrong with this. Within the thread, Dennis strawmans multiple times, but that's expected from the almighty Def Noodles. When somebody says calling out comedians for racist jokes will end comedy, that means the person thinks that the only funny thing is racism. Jesus, Dennis, wise words. He then states how jokes all follow a structure and that racism is just injected for shock value. So not only did he strawman how people perceive comedy, he's also attempting to tell people how comedy works and how it's structured. Racist jokes are a part of comedy, Dennis. They can be well crafted and funny. And the reason people defend racist and dark humor isn't because the ideology of bigotry, but it's more in favor of defending the freedom of expression, to make jokes on stereotypes. And yes, while calling out comedians for their racist jokes and demanding accountability won't kill comedy, it can still disencourage certain comedians to express themselves, causing them to limit their acts and jokes. Walking on eggshells and pondering the reaction of every decision is a creative limitation, and it just shouldn't be necessary. You know, because it's comedy, they're jokes. The field where confidence and the ability to bounce back if a joke doesn't land determines if you succeed or fail. I know you might think you're the funniest person in the world, Dennis, but out of every person on planet Earth, why should anyone follow your perspective of formulaic comedy? If we're going off your stand-ups directly, I would even advise people to stay the hell away from your advice.
I just took a DNA test. I'm 100% that bitch.
He claims comedians use racism because they can't craft a funny joke. I mean, of course this is egotistical, but who really cares? Dennis's ego is equivalent to a paper house made of sticks. But it's just also not true at all. There's so many good stand-up acts that have racist stereotypes or scenarios. But since Dennis isn't a good comedian, he wouldn't know this. A joke is usually weaved all the way through so it builds to the punchline, making it crafted comedy. You can make jokes about dark topics and have them be executed perfectly. And even though it might be insensitive and taboo, you could still accept that it was a good joke. How many cops does it take to screw in a light bulb? None, they just beat up the room for being black. This is a joke about police brutality, and if I wanted to, I could blow smoke and make a huge deal. Or I could just say, that was witty and clever. Have a nice day. Because it's a joke, it's just not that deep. Also, Dennis, comedians don't value themselves as gods and think their jokes are perfect because they don't apologize for being offended. That's just a ridiculous straw man. They just have confidence and understand the context of what they said was a joke in the moment. And since they have their own character or morals, they don't have to whine and ponder on the internet about it like you. Eddie Murphy, Dave Chappelle, Bill Burr. I'm sorry to say it, but comedy genius Def Noodles is gonna need you guys to stop using racism in your humor. You're encouraging it. I know Dave Chappelle literally disrupted one of his acts to educate the audience about Emmett Till, but you're spreading so much hate by making jokes about racism. Concluding the conversation, humor is humor. Everyone's free to be a critic and dislike certain jokes or styles, but attempting to set standards and limitations is just ridiculous. And on top of that, strawmanning people who disagree is just pretentious and moronic. Thank you for giving me a sliver of your time. If this was the equivalent of scraping fingernails on a chalkboard, then please cheer. You'll be liberated quickly. Thanks, Nick, for inviting me on this. I'm Doktor Skipper, and I'll see you soon.
Please subscribe to Doktor Skipper. He makes some of the best content for a channel his size and covers a variety of topics that I personally have enjoyed. If you like the kind of content that I upload on this channel, odds are you'd probably like what you'd find on his channel. With that being said, I think the best way to end this off is to remind everyone how exactly we got here.
Hey guys, today's video is going to be a little bit different. I'm just going to have a conversation with you guys because, especially after yesterday's video, I got a lot of feedback. The fact that I take myself so seriously as a journalist in this context, the way I present things is so serious, that's what's supposed to be the satire. But I don't feel like a lot of people really know what comedy is. A lot of the people who have the strongest opinions about comedy haven't been in a comedy club in maybe ever in their lives, you know? I've performed in basically every major theater and venue, a comedy venue in New York and in LA. I'm just gonna be completely honest with you guys. I've just been kind of sad over the past few days, ever since that whole thing with Kavos, where he basically tore my channel apart. I appreciate all the positive feedback I got from all of you. A lot of you left some really kind comments.
I posted this Rodney Dangerfield quote and it got completely taken out of context. And I posted it knowing that I would get a reaction, but I wanted to see how many people would get it, how many people wouldn't. And it was just interesting to see that my most loyal followers were responding with gifs of Dangerfield. So the majority of my followers get it. The people who are there just to I guess, for other reasons, they were confused. So I don't think you're a fascist. I think that you play around with fascist ideas.
I don't find myself to be a douchebag. I don't know what in my video caused you to think that I'm a douchebag. Everything he said has kind of been cycling in my head, and I've been thinking about it and thinking of new ways that I can improve my channel. I honestly don't know immediately what I'm gonna do, but I've been trying out different things here and there. That's why I tried to react differently.
I have a life, so contrary to what it seems. There are a few commentators who like say that comedy is dead and this and that, and you look at what they think is comedy, and to them it's just saying racial slurs and using the Confederate flag, and I'm like, this is something that people can't help being. They're gay. That's who they are, and that's the whole point.
I'm not referencing gay people at all in this post. I'm literally just using it as like a placeholder for stupid.
Oh, exactly. So you're calling gay people stupid. I definitely think that I'm learning a lot about myself and about the world as I react to each one of these videos. Are you familiar with a soup?
No.
Are you familiar with a Colbert Report?
No.
Are you familiar with Dan Savage?
Explain.
Like what I'm doing right now is I'm kind of breaking the fourth wall a little bit, because I could have just not said anything, just kept it shut, and people could have, maybe eventually they would have realized it, but that's like I'm playing a character. That's how I see it. That is, first off, I think it's important to clarify that nowhere in this tweet does it say you're racist. It says disenfranchise minority creators. It says makes jokes.
Wait, if you're disenfranchising minority creators, wouldn't that be a racist act?
What I will say is that Def Noodles should probably remain a journalist, and I base that off the fact that he's just as slimy as every other fucking one I've met.
I've been Turkey Tom. Thanks for watching, and until next time.
Oh, you touch my tra-la-la. My ding-ding-dong.
Leave me alone.
Fuck politics. Nobody gives a fuck about politics, okay? I am going to help all of you learn how to flirt, okay? I'm already fucking neck deep in pussy and ass.